transcending history and the world, a tale of souls and swords, eternally retold.
What is going on, everybody? As always, hope you're having a good morning, noon, evening, or midnight. So what do we have here today? The vampire hunting organization known as the Sarafan. Now, the Sarafan has been a big part of the series since the beginning. We know the Sarafan has existed since the early days of Nosgoth, when the world was being ran by cursed vampires. The Sarafan was put together by the Circle of Nine. It was led by conflict guardian Malik, who was protector of the Circle, and later on our good buddies Raziel and his brethren in faith, Terrell, Duma, Rahab, Zephon, and Melchiah would join the Sarafan and soon become elite Sarafan commanders under Malik. Together they will famously be known for taking down the legendary ancient vampire Janos Aldrin and ripping out his heart, in which would be known as the Heart of Darkness. This is without a doubt the peak golden era for the Sarafan faction. However, this is not the era of the Sarafan I came here to speak on. No, we are going to hold off and look through the reborn Sarafan from Blood Omen 2. I will greatly appreciate if you enjoy these type of videos and want more, to give the video a like, and always feel free to jot down in the comments your thoughts. I always love hearing people's thoughts and ideas. Thanks, and let's get to the discussion. Now, one thing that I notice whenever I read comments, posts, is just casually running into, I always see people talking about Golden Age Sarafan, but I haven't really seen anybody talking about Neo Sarafan, or rather as much. Granted, I don't actually go out of my way to check, but just casually going on from my experience and the things I hear fellow Legacy of Kain enjoyers discuss, well, Neo Sarafan is never really a talk, which is what we will be calling this version of the Sarafan. Now, aside from people probably just not liking Blood Omen 2 enough to acknowledge anything of its existence, a big reason for the lack of people not talking on Neo Sarafan is because, well, there isn't a ton of backstory nor information, at least that's in plain sight. That is, but what do we know about the Neo Sarafan? Well, one thing that needs to be known is that Neo Sarafan has no connection with Golden Era Sarafan in no way, shape, or form. This is a completely new breed of humans that share the same hateful ideology towards vampires as Golden Era Sarafan. This is the Hylden General's adaptation of the Sarafan Order, so he just adopted the name and role as their history is widely known across Nosgoth, and has inspired some humans that follow the same views. The pillars collapsed when a young Kain made a crucial choice in Nosgoth history, which was a good thing for the Hylden General, who would leave Mortania's body and take over Janos' mind and body. That would be the same being that was known as the Dark Entity in Blood Omen 1, who was behind the orchestration of Ariel's death to work his own plan to get rid of the pillars. He would use Janos' body to open up the gate for the Hyldens to be freed from the demon realm, which now means his own physical body is now free. He would then use Janos' body as a blood source for the device. Fun connection there, and how it all comes full circle for the events of Blood Omen 2. Kain started rising to power after Blood Omen 1. He'd grown stronger and built a vampire army and became a fearsome force within Nosgoth. Terrible time to be a human, nothing more than cattle for the vampire, which is what slowly grew some of these humans that would fight and rebel against the vampires, and growing in hatred towards them. And how well all things aligned perfectly, as this was the best time for the Hylden General to come together with the humans, for they have a common enemy and share a common goal of seeing the extinction of the vampires. The Hylden General formed Neo Sarafan, thus becoming the Sarafan Lord. With this new order formed, their objective would of course be to eliminate Kain and his vampire army, in which they would succeed in defeating Kain and his army. Nosgoth would then, for the time, belong to the Sarafan Lord, and Neo Sarafan would be the top dogs of the land, the ones in charge, the conquerors of vampires, and the protectors, as they would like the citizens to see them as. Now, I really want to go over the design of Neo Sarafan, because one thing is clear, besides the males being bald as hell, is that they look significantly different than Golden Era Sarafan, enough to separate the two as different organizations, which they technically are, while also maintaining an angelic-like holy representation. Let's start with the Sarafan Guards, which we first see in Chapter 1, but we don't fight until Chapter 2. So what we see here, they are bald, yes, but they are armored up, starting with a mask covering up from their nose. Main colors consisting in light blue and silver, the shoulder pads and inner materials of their armor in dark blue, with the waistcloth, which has their Sarafan symbol, a common armor design all of the males Sarafan share. Later on, the Sarafan Guards will have a slightly different design that has more pattern designs on their armor to make it look more detailed and upgraded, with gold around the edges of the shoulder pads, around the gutlets and the abdominal part of the armor, as well as the edges of the waistcloth, and now the symbol is in gold instead of its normal black color. Up here next, we have the Glyph Guards, who we first see during a cutscene with Uma near the end of Chapter 1, but won't eventually fight until Chapter 3. Now these fellas' armors are upgraded from their Sarafan Guard buddies, who are essentially the same models and voices, but the most notable thing being the glowing gold design around their armor and gold dots around their helmet, which is tied to the lure for their armor. Throughout this game, you can sneak up on any enemy and everybody in mist form. However, the Glyph Guards will always know your presence is around because their armor will light up whenever a vampire is nearby, making it impossible to sneak up on them. So I love when there's reason behind designs. One other noticeable thing is, unlike the Sarafan Guards and other male Sarafans coming up, Glyph Guards' faces are exposed with no mask covering it. Now their armor is practically the same as the Sarafan Guards, with silver and light blue armor and dark blue in the inner materials of the armor, with the waistcloth of their Sarafan symbol in black, but with a few add-ons, a long dark blue scarf, slightly stronger shoulder pads, and a shield attached to the left arm of their armor. Now we go on to the Sarafan Archers, aka the female Sarafans, we later encountered by Chapter 6 onwards, having less armor and more skin exposed at the waist and thighs, in a more feminine attire, the main color being blue like the other Sarafan, a helmet with no face mask, probably should have wore one if we're being completely honest. Straps that connect the top and armor boots together, light shoulder pads that look weaker than any of the other Sarafan armors. The chest piece looks more like it's made out of a soft fabric material, looks like a sports bra. Pretty much it for the female Sarafan. Now, a interesting concept, you can see a unused female Sarafan design that was scrapped from the game. Either the original look they were going for or a later game enemy. My guess is this would have been a later game second female Sarafan enemy type, as we can see that this one has a shield with the Sarafan symbol, and I'll even go a step further predicting her armor could have had glyph vampire detection around it, making her another enemy type that you cannot sneak up on, but that's just speculations right there. Sadly, this was cut and we'll never know, at least for right now. All three of these Sarafans wield the longsword most official guards and officers of this time period will walk around with. If you were in a far distance, the female Sarafan will pull out their crossbows and start shooting flaming arrows, as they are the Sarafan archers, and some of the Glyph Guards later on may also wield two-sided blades. Now we go to the Sarafan Knights, my personal favorites alongside Glyph Knights, which we'll get to anyways. The Sarafan Knights you first encounter in Chapter 4, as the first one just bursts right through a door. One hell of an entrance, I'd say. Sarafan Knights are way more armored up than any of the previous Sarafan enemies. These bad boys have shoulder pads big enough to check off going into the NFL. Funny enough, these guys are built like NFL players, even having a charge attack. They are also bald, with the same mask as the Sarafan guards, but they also have a guard piece at their chin that sticks out their armor, a shield on their left arm, the colors light blue with the inner materials being two-stripe combination of light blue and dark blue, and the blue waistcloth with the Sarafan symbol in black, and a blue cape that splits into two parts. One big notice of their armor is that these back pieces are their armor resemble the Sarafan symbol. That's a nice touch. They also have two other armor palette variants throughout the game. The second one is the same color and pattern design as the second Sarafan guard palette armor, but this third one, which you won't see till the second to last level, I like to call this one Bumblebee armor. The armor consists of three color combinations across the armor, gray, black, and yellow, but keeping the waistcloth at its original blue color with the black Sarafan symbol. They also wield one of the most unique looking weapons in the game, where the handle is on the side of the blade, supporting the lower, middle, and top parts of this ginormous edged blade that looks like not only can it hurt the opponent, but also hurt the person holding it. These enemies are the most memorable ones to me. And lastly, the Glyph Knights, in which you first see in battle at the end of Chapter 5, where one will be guarding the room that Uma is imprisoned in. Glyph Knights are the only Sarafan enemies to carry red as their main color instead of blue. These guys really made themselves stand out from the rest, having a helmet over their face along with the oversized chin guard piece, two red helmet hair pieces sticking out, bulky shoulder pads, a shield, a red cape, red waistcloth with the Sarafan symbol, a belt with a jewelry piece as the buckle, glyph markings around their shield, thigh plates, or whatever that piece is called, and their shoulder pads because their armor has glyph and will detect vampires. I'm starting to actually realize the glyph markings on the armors are probably written in Hylden language. Glyph Knights are pretty much the Sarafan Knights but with glyph. Basically same model and voice, just different special attacks. They wield swords that are twice as big as the long swords that the lower Sarafan members wield, double the girth, very girthy. And the best part with both the Sarafan Knights and Glyph Knight weapons is you can instant kill whoever is in your way by beheading them. Very nasty, satisfying detail from a 23-year-old game. Out of curiosity, which of these Sarafan designs is your favorite? If you let me know in the comments, I would really like that. So I know I keep cracking jokes on how the male Sarafan members are all bald, and pretty sure even the ones where helmets are bald underneath, since they're the same model as the lesser versions. Now this is probably a developer choice, but I like to look deep into this and tie it into universal lore. And my ideal is the reason that Neo Sarafan members are bald is to pay homage and respect to the man that led the Sarafan to glory, Malik. If you didn't know, Malik underneath his helmet is bald. It is not far-fetched for Neo Sarafan members to represent Malik, who led the Sarafan. They follow in his footsteps and carry on his hatred for the vampires. He is the figure they look up to, and inside of the universe I like to believe there's lore behind why all these dudes have all commonly chose to wear a bald head. So I believe to any indication as to why Malik is the inspiration behind it. So the placement of rank and position of each Sarafan are both clear and unclear at the same time, so I will try to break it down the best way I can. So we know the Sarafan Lord is the leader, but what about the other Sarafan members? What are the placements and positions of each Sarafan type? The Sarafan guards are the lowest ranked Sarafan members, pretty much the street officers that are on duty to patrol around the streets of Meridian, even in the lower parts of the city where you would not see the higher up members at, so this is where they stand. Your standotypical foot soldiers is what the Sarafan guards rank at. Next up is kind of tricky because it's not clear on second bottom, and we see the glyph guards are even around as well in the more rundown parts of Meridian, as we do see the first glyph guard in the slums. Could be acting as the supervisor for the Sarafan guards though. The glyph guards are still senior to another Sarafan type, and that is the archers, aka female Sarafan. Now, what makes the Sarafan archers above the Sarafan guards in terms of importance? Well, not much, to be honest. In fact, they are probably on par in placement. However, the difference here, not only can they also use the longsword, but they are also skillful in archery, which is something the regular guards can't do. And we first see the Sarafan archers at the industrial quarters, roaming around guarding a place, which is an important job of a place to guard, especially considering the Nexus Stone is located at the factories of the industrial quarters. So they are probably the same rank of position as the Sarafan guards, but if I had to put one above the other, then I would go for the archers. Next up the ranks will be the glyph guards. Best way to describe their position is what I believe is when a Sarafan guard advances, whether that be from their work as a Sarafan or their skills, they eventually get promoted to a glyph guard, where they can wear the shiny new armor with the glyph magic imbued, which is also what makes them ahead of the archers as well. So they are probably tasked with the same job as the Sarafan guards, but are their superiors. Knights are definitely high ranks, the ones called in for the emergencies, the Sarafan members that are the strongest in fighting. These boys are the ones that get called in when there's a real threat on the loose, like Kain.
Bodies were found downstairs. The intruder is near. I want you to patrol the courtyard.
Yes, sir.
I'll guard the cell. Move out.
And then the highest of the ranks, Glyph Knights. So similar with the Sarafan guards to the Glyph guards. Here, when a Sarafan Knight gets promoted to the highest position, he becomes a Glyph Knight, who are essentially the commanders, same placement as Raziel and his brethrens were. We can see them giving orders to other Sarafan members, and they are even side by side right next to the Sarafan Lord when we first battle Kain. Safe to very much say that the Glyph Knights are the Sarafan Lord's most trusted Sarafan to be given such high positions through their loyalty and skills. Chapter 6, at the docks, the final location before you reach Hylden City to face the Sarafan Lord. He is aware Kain is approaching closer. The docks is loaded up with the Sarafan, and the Sarafan Lord made sure to send in his top dogs to try to stop Kain. And guess what the docks are heavily guarded by? Glyph Knights. So with that, it is evident that they are the highest rank in the Hylden General Sarafan army. So we can't go through this video without talking about the home of the Sarafan. That would be the Sarafan Keep, which is the headquarters of the Sarafan. So you head to the Sarafan Keep by chapter 5, but actually the first time you technically see the Sarafan Keep is on a map in the intro, which interestingly enough looks like the Sarafan Keep is the front entrance of Meridian. And with the perspective of the map being where Kain and his army are traveling, this is very likely where Kain had his first battle with the Sarafan Lord at in the intro, right in their domain, possibly why the Sarafan were prepared and triumphant over Kain's army. Inside of the Sarafan Keep, they have various places, a boiler room or furnace, a place for prisoners in case someone gets out of line, and even a pool. See, even Sarafan need a break to relax and swim. Thieves must sneak in through the same passageway as Kain or something, because downstairs we can witness guards and thieves fighting off downstairs. Now up on the first floor, there is a big dining room upstairs, most likely where the guests can all eat.
There. What's the matter? I saw guards running down the stairs.
I've no idea, milady.
Go and find out. Is it a fire, an attack of some kind?
Perhaps we should wait until someone comes and tells us.
Did you hear me? Do you know who I am?
Milady, perhaps I should simply escort you to the garrison. Certainly they would be able to tell you there what is the matter.
Oh, very well.
For something I am not.
Don't waste my time. I know what you are. I work for the Cabal. Now listen carefully.
Speak then, madam.
The woman you seek is held in one of the upper towers.
Very good. How do I get to her?
Not so fast. You will need to pass this ward gate, and you will need me to open it for you.
Then do so at once.
In due time. First, there is another task that must be completed.
What task?
A nobleman of some importance is visiting the keep at this moment. He must be killed.
So that you may open the ward gate. You think me a fool? Open it!
He must be killed, I tell you. He is a traitor. He has done immeasurable harm to the Cabal. I swear it.
Do I look like a common assassin?
The ward gate will not be opened until that man is dead. I promise you. His name is Artemis. You will know him by his blue cloak. When he is dead, when his lying tongue has been stopped, I will open this gate and not before. Will you do it?
Apparently, I have no choice.
The civilians you see walking around are predominantly upper citizen folks, which means the Sarafan Keep is also a place where the more rich and wealthy citizens come to, rather that be to visit or to do some sort of business, where the important figures, royalty and or politicians of Meridian would be seen at. This is evident in that clip I just showed. And when we have to do a tad side quest for a woman to kill an important man who apparently has done some harm to the Cabal. In the main room, there is a big portrait raised high above an image of the exact moment the Sarafan Lord and Neo Sarafan defeated Kain and his army, potentially a missed opportunity to not have Kain monologue about this portrait in my opinion. And to point out the obvious, the entire first floor of the keep is heavily guarded to the gills by Sarafan knights. As being the headquarters, one would expect. On top of that, the place has glyph shields around different parts of the keep. So the place is armored down to the teeth from any vampire intruders, and while the Sarafan Order would like to be painted as the heroes, they are not as heroic as they would pretend to be, with shady businesses and even murdering cold-blooded when it goes against them, abusing their powers at will.
We will not be making any further payments.
But our agreement...
Conditions have changed. Our agreement has been suspended.
I have deliveries waiting. I can't send them back.
Throw them into the sea for all I care.
Throw them?
We won't be needing them.
But my contract. I can go to a higher authority over this.
I suggest you take your losses without another word and go!
I'll talk to the council. We won't stand for this.
By order of the Sarafan Lord, you shall do no such thing!
Wait. What are you doing?
Time to die.
Well, that was fucked up. Then again, their leader is a Hylden, which is a whole other situation in itself. Did Neo Sarafan even know that their Sarafan Lord was not human, or any of the glyph rights? There were Hyldens posing as humans working on the glyph network, just wandering around. Did they even know there was a species amongst them called the Hylden? There's never a moment in Blood Omen 2 where this is up front. After all, the Sarafan Lord face is covered up in his helmet, and I don't think he even ever bothered to take it off in front of his Neo Sarafan. I know in game we can see parts of his face and see that he is clearly not human, but in universe his face is covered up. Maybe they just thought he was a powerful sorcerer, or in their minds would explain his green glowing eyes. I'm just trying to make sense of it. Either way, it's crystal clear he intended to hide his identity from them, to keep them under his control, under his fingertips. There is not a moment where they question anything about him. Had they known of the Sarafan Lord's Hylden nature, would some members be turned away and disbanded from the order, or even be more questioning and weary of his order? So it makes sense why the Sarafan Lord hid his identity, to keep his plan smooth. He needed Neo Sarafan for his true real plans of world takeover to go smoother. Then again, it is also possible some Neo Sarafan members could have had their suspicions and probably not care, as they themselves were pretty savage humans who were into their power hunger, and they hate vampires, and this guy also hates vampires. So perhaps in the long run, they wouldn't have cared regardless if the Sarafan Lord wasn't human and of the Hylden race. Due to the partnership, they would see the Hylden as friend instead of foe. But there's one strong element of Neo Sarafan that kind of takes away their true meaning and contradict themselves in their beliefs. While we never hear any of them ever question the Sarafan Lord allowing vampires from Kain army to come work for him, even so much so they also are fine with taking orders from vampires when they themselves absolutely despise vampires and want nothing more than for vampires to die. In fact, in chapter 3 they don't even attack Kain on sight knowing he's a vampire. It goes to show the members of Neo Sarafan are very flawed humans in what they stand for, and that is not all about the keeping peace of the world and the civilians safe. Sure, that's part of the reason, but they are also into the control, the power, enforcing law. They still very much so hate vampires as their main motive, but vampires also give them a reason to justify their bad side deeds. So I know I said I wasn't going to talk about Golden Era Sarafan, but this still relates to Neo Sarafan. Let's point out a few similarities and differences in both Golden Era Sarafan and Neo Sarafan. Well, the main similarity is, of course, both incarnations are driven by their hatred towards vampires, understandably as they are enemies to humans, and it is a rise of humans standing up to the vampires so they don't become food. Second similarity, both incarnations like to portray themselves as these angelic figures that are all about their righteousness and associate their order in a religious-like belief, like saviors sent from heaven, and vampires are perceived as spawns from hell. Now, the differences. The obvious, they have two different flags they represent. Golden Era Sarafan flag logo is like the headpiece of a golden trident. And Neo Sarafan flag logo is like their in-universe version of a cross. More implications on that when we see the mind control holy priests holding the Sarafan logos as if they were crosses. Golden Era Sarafan had notable brothers in faith, which is something that Neo Sarafan does not have. The Golden Era had Malik, Raziel, Terrell, Duma, Rahab, Zephon, and Melchiah as memorable members of the Sarafan. They were even given a respecting place for their tombs after they died. Neo Sarafan did not have any memorable Sarafan commanders or any strong brotherhood that we know of, which means Neo Sarafan members were not as close together as Golden Era Sarafan. We hear them call each other brothers, even though we know they aren't related but just brothers in faith. Well, Neo Sarafan never regard one another as brothers. Golden Era Sarafan would have never worked with a vampire. Remember how I talked about how contradicting it was for Neo Sarafan to be willing to be working with vampires or not question the Sarafan Lord's decision on having them allied with vampires. Golden Era Sarafan under no circumstances would ever take any orders from a vampire. They would carve its heart out faster than they did Janos. The Circle of Nine has no involvement in Neo Sarafan. Now we know the Circle of Nine was heavily involved in Golden Era Sarafan, the Pillar Guardian, Malik, the Protector of the Circle, and Mobius, the Time Streamer, and whatever influence he had over Malik to take orders from, even though they were equally in the same position as Pillar Guardians. Well, Neo Sarafan did not have none of the influence of the Pillar Guardians in their affairs. Actually makes me wonder what would Malik think of Neo Sarafan, or what schemes would Mobius try to pull with them. I actually wonder, how would Mobius' involvement in Blood Omen 2 impact the game in general? Neo Sarafan uses glyph energy in their armor, and Golden Era Sarafan does not. This has to do with Neo Sarafan's associations with the Sarafan Lord in the glyph rites, which were Hylden that will work on glyph magic. On the contrary, Golden Era Sarafan had mages, and Neo Sarafan did not. Isn't it interesting how both incarnations have tools the others don't? Now I spoke earlier how the female Sarafan and Neo Sarafan were archers, which was good for distance attacks. However, Golden Era Sarafan females were mages and could throw magical projectiles. I'm actually surprised with all the different kind of resources Neo Sarafan would use, having mages wasn't one of them. Wait just a minute, I am glad I randomly thought to have a look back at some of the concept art images. Now since I was a kid and every time I would beat Blood Omen 2, I would enjoy looking at all of the concept art pictures and the in-game credits, especially to see enemies that were never in the game and didn't make it. Now remember earlier when I pointed out a female Sarafan enemy type that did not make it into the game? It was likely scrapped. Well, there's possibly 2 more of them. I don't know if it's a completely new enemy or scrap design of an already existing Sarafan. Nevertheless, they must be mentioned. So we already talked about the scrapped female that we see, and I gave my hypothesis and what I think was the ideal they were going for. You can go back to the section where I break down the Sarafan designs. I'll have it timestamped in case you skipped ahead or somehow made it this far and missed that part, but here we have 2 possible extra Sarafan members to talk about. Now here we have possibly a Sarafan who is built like the Sarafan Knights and Glyph Knights, similar bulky shoulder pads and a shield on the left arm. Now there is a lot of what ifs with this enemy, but I could not leave this unspoken. We don't see the Sarafan symbol anywhere on this character, but that could have just been added in the final cut. We just know he is similar in design to the Sarafan Knights and Glyph Knights. He looks like he's bald, of course, and wearing a mask, similar to the ones the Sarafan guards and knights wear, and he has glyph magic around his armor just like the glyph guards and knights. But a major difference we see is the glyph around his armor is green, just like the glyph shields we see around Meridian, instead of gold what we see on the guards and knights. Now this could just be an early design of the Glyph Knights, especially with having the same girthy sword. That is very possibly. However, I believe this was supposed to be a new enemy. There's a major detail to further that idea. It's unlike the Glyph Knights, this character's sword is enchanted with glyph magic all around it. My prediction is this could have been a near-end game enemy or even a boss fight before the Hylden General. This could have been the right-hand man, the secret trump card the Sarafan lore had. But once again, this is speculations off of a concept art that has no revealed information to it. And then there's this guy. You know, growing up I always thought this character looked similar to the thugs from early in the game and could have been a later thug enemy type. That's what I always thought, but recently, and how could I have not realized this before? This character has a Sarafan symbol tattooed right on his chest to his stomach, so this could have been a Sarafan member, maybe a later enemy, and if so, he looks so different than the other Sarafan members. He looks like Kratos, but with black markings instead of red, like Kratos before Kratos and God of War existed. And the weapon is very interesting, a chain with a smaller blunt handle on one side and on the other side a huge club-like piece to crack somebody's head open. I'm extremely intrigued how this enemy would have played like, and using their weapon could have been very different. I'm torn between thoughts here. I feel as I always has, that this is supposed to be another thug enemy type or early design for the thug enemies that was scrapped from the game. But what reason would he be repping the Sarafan symbol on his body if he is not a Sarafan? There's just not a concrete answer here, but I still felt it just needed to be brought up in this video. I would really love so much if somebody from the Blood Omen 2 team did an interview explaining the scrapped character and design plans of the concept arts. So I need to address this really quick just in case someone is wondering about the Sarafan priests. I have not included them because this is for Neo Sarafan members, part of the Hylden General's army. The Sarafan priests are being mind controlled beyond their will by Marcus. If they were part of the Sarafan army, they would not need to be mind controlled as they will understand the task at hand. They must have disagreed or refused to help the Sarafan to be needed to have their minds taken from them. Sure, they are using scepters in the shape of the Sarafan symbol, but that could be influence under the mind control of Marcus, who works for the Sarafan Lord himself. On top of that, we only ever see these enemies while they are mind controlled. We don't know how they are or where they stand as themselves. Maybe they share views with the Sarafan on a religious surface, but they appear to reside only in the upper city, as that is the only place we ever see them. They were never in any other residing places of the Sarafan, so there's just not enough evidence to support they are within the army of the Sarafan. A lore and mystery for these guys will be saved for a future video.
I beg you! We know but hairless apes cowering in caves. We gave you all that you had, and now we take it back.
I have been thinking about the aftermath for Neo Sarafan. Where would they be in the long run? Well, considering the Sarafan lore has world-conquering plans for him and his kind, that mean even taking over and eventually turning on the humans, as we literally see a Hylden spill the truth to a human before killing him. So in a timeline scenario where the Sarafan lore completely rules, Neo Sarafan will only last till they have served their purpose. Once the Sarafan lore succeeded, and the Hylden's ultimate plans start to come into fruition in Nosgoth. This is possibly where all ends for Neo Sarafan, as they are mere puppets working for a deeper plot for the Sarafan lore. So there's two outcomes for the Neo Sarafan that I'm just gonna go off the top of my head to think of. The first one is the Sarafan lore reveals himself fully to them. No, not in that way. Not in that way. But revealing his Hylden face and heritage, turning on them and eliminating all of them as he sees no further use in them. His real people are free now. He doesn't need humans. Then there's the flip side, outcome number 2. He keeps them around, branch them around across to guard other Hylden scientists, continue making them believe they are all allies, when in reality, the humans are being enslaved. Or hell, maybe there's a third option. He will find a way to have his finest Sarafan soldiers undergo a Hylden Sarafan hybrid warrior transformation through some scientific experiment. It's quite unclear what the endgame for the Neo Sarafan will look like if the Sarafan lore reigns supreme post Blood Omen 2. Well, Neo Sarafan is quite a mystery of a revived faction, and Blood Omen 2 is the only game of their adaptation. I would guess after Kain defeated the Sarafan lord, Neo Sarafan, I don't think they disbanded completely, but scattered around without no real leader and possibly eventually stayed very down low. There's always someone new to step up as leader to pick up the pieces back up, and there's no telling what happened throughout history in between the time of post Blood Omen 2 and Soul Reaver 1. Kain could have still had run-ins with Neo Sarafan, maybe even did battle with a new threatening leader in their order. Any of this could have happened in the centuries before Soul Reaver 1. That's what I love to speculate. Well, now that is it for Neo Sarafan. They have few concrete information about them, but a lot of mystery surrounding them that I enjoy breaking down. I love talking about Legacy of Kain topics that don't really get much limelight of discussion, and I'm sure there's more uncovered lore about Neo Sarafan, but maybe not yet discovered. But as a die-hard enjoyer of the Legacy of Kain series, I love to believe that all of these undiscovered lores in Legacy of Kain will one day be unveiled. Maybe perhaps some are left unanswered for the better. Well, that's it for today. Tell me, what do you think of Neo Sarafan? Do you like them? Do you hate them? What are you curious about with them? Let me know. That'll be it. Take care. I will see you next time.